Finally, coming to the third and last phase of the ancient history one discussion that we are having today, the Vedic Age. The Vedic Age is the start, the advent of a new entrant in the Indian history, and that is Aryans. These people were not natives of the Indian subcontinent, but instead came from the Caspian Sea and from Central Asia. So then they set up, so they are also characterized as somebody because of whom the Indus Valley civilization is destroyed. Again, claims, historians' opinions, not the most relevant for us, but definitely interesting to know that they might definitely be one of the reasons why the Indus Valley civilization was ruined. Now, the Aryans, after coming here, how and when did they come? So they came during 1500 BC through the Khyber Pass, that is which is located in the Hindu Kush mountain. Please keep in mind this point has in fact been asked in previous CLAT papers, so it's always best to know these things. They might just repeat questions. So finally, this Vedic Age is again not so simple. It is divided into Rig Vedic Age and a later Vedic Age. Now the Rig Vedic Age is, again, you can see the kind of improvement from the Rig Vedic Age to the later Vedic Age. Rig Veda, again we'll be discussing, that is the oldest religious text in the world. We'll be discussing more on that later. Now the Rig Vedic period is where Aryans first settled in India, and the place where they settled is called the Sapt Sindhu, the land of the 7 rivers. And I don't personally think that it's needed for you to remember what the names of the 7 rivers are. It's not the most ideal, but if you do, it's always great. But the best point to remember here is that the place where they stayed is referred to as Sapt Sindhu. Now the political organization, again we see a development from IVC to the political organization in Rig Vedic period, where you had a monarchical form with the populace, that is the people, called the Jan, and a king called a Rajan. Now in this time is when the social hierarchy was set up. There was the Brahmins, there was the Kshatriyas, there was the Kayasts, and there was the Shudras. So initially it is believed that these 4 categories, the 4 divisions in the society, were based on the different body parts of Brahma and were considered as different occupations performed by people. But over the time there was a social hierarchy which developed, and then it became hereditary, then it became hierarchical, hereditary in nature. Now moving on, the economic life. Aryans followed a mixed economy. So what does that mean? So we had discussed that there was domestication that happened during the Mesolithic Age. Now that has changed. Now the Aryans were not only limited to just farming or just domestication and pastoral living. It was a mixed economy, and there you can see this time the barter system was in fact changing. You could see that there's something called nishka, the gold coins which were used for transaction, and that allowed for the barter system. So there is definitely more economic activity like we know today during the Rig Vedic period, and not completely a barter system. So there you can see concept of tax also being levied. So please note, there were 2 taxes that were levied during the Rig Vedic period, that was the Bali and Bhaga. So please keep in mind, it's an important point. Now moving on to the religious life. The natural forces were what the people of Rig Vedic period praised or they prayed to the natural forces. And Indra, the god Indra, the god of wind, was the most powerful god at that time, and he was the one who was worshipped the most. So yeah, with that we sort of complete the Vedic period, the Rig Vedic period, and now we come to the later stage, the later Vedic period, also known as the painted graveware phase. Now why is it known as the painted graveware phase? That's simply because painted graveware from that time was excavated in part of India, and that is why that phase is being associated with the kind of products or the kind of artifacts that were excavated during excavations. So in the later Vedic period, the Aryans had spread their territory now over Punjab to western UP till the Ganga Yamuna Doab. So you can say somewhere around Lucknow. So that's a huge build up over the years. And now a lot of great cities had come up during that time. There was Vidisha, there was Kaushambi, Kasi, Ayodhya. So you can identify Ayodhya, something clicks, right? And yes, we will be discussing something related to Ayodhya. Now the political organization at that time involved tiny tribal system, and they replaced very strong kingdoms. So this kingdom, the strong kingdoms replaced the tiny tribal systems. So now you had a proper king, a samrat, and we'll be discussing about the dynasties during this time in ancient history too. But for the purpose of later Vedic period, it is important to know that there was a samrat, something which was different from the Vedic period, where there was a Jan, there was a Rajan, a tribal population, now transforming into a kingdom. Now the fourfold division of the society that we had discussed before had now been crystallized too. So here there was clearly a transformation in terms of the political organization. Now let us look at something which we've all heard and read about, the Vedic literature. We've all heard about the four Vedas. One, the Rig Veda, second, the Sam Veda, third, the Yajur Veda, and fourth, the Atharva Veda. And we'll be discussing all these Vedas in detail. So Rig Veda, these are the oldest religious texts in the world, as I had informed previously, and these are a compilation of hymns. There are 1028 hymns, and that have been divided into 10 volumes or 10 mandalas. So the 10th mandala contains the famous Purushukta, which explains the four varnas, so the caste system. And it's important to note the 10th mandala and also the 3rd mandala, where we were given or we were exposed to the Gayatri mantra, which was in worshipping the goddess. So mandala number 10 and mandala number 3 is something that you need to be aware of. Now the second Ved, that is the Sam Ved, it is a collection of songs, and it laid foundation of Indian music. So that's, I think, the most. So Sam Ved is, in fact, draws heavily from the Rig Veda and the hymns given there. Now the Yajur Veda and the Atharva Veda are again divided into two parts. There's the Yajur Veda is in fact divided into two parts: the Krishna Yajur Veda and the Shukla Yajur Veda. The Krishna is the darker Yajur Veda, and Shukla Yajur Veda refers to the white Yajur Veda. So you just need to know the distinction. And Yajur Veda lays down the procedure for performance of sacrifices. So keep that in mind. What these Vedas and what did they lay down, or what were they associated with? These points are important to correlate. Now Brahmanas are essentially explanations to Vedas, and they contained details about the Vedic hymns and essentially how are supposed to be performed, and like what was the rationale behind something. So the Brahmanas also had a crucial role to play. So I have in the slides mentioned the correlation between the Veda and Brahmana. So if you can, please, by all means, you should consider remembering the correlation. You can try different methods of remembering this. So yeah, it may be a little tough, but I think through reading and through revising and solving questions, I think the names will become easier after a while. It did for me. So finally, the Aryankas are called the forest books and are written mainly by the hermits living in the jungles. So Aryankas, forest books. I think these two things would be best for understanding this. Finally, coming to the Upanishads. So the Upanishads are, it means, and as you can see in the slide, it means to sit down near someone, and denotes a student sitting near his guru. So if you know that during the Vedic period, these are all Shruti based hymns. That means that they are not written down anywhere. They are passed on from generation to generation. So this Upanishads are again Shruti based, and that's where the knowledge was passed on from the guru to the shishya in the form of the Upanishads, and they are considered as the main source of Indian philosophy. Satyameva Jayate sounds familiar, right? Satyameva Jayate is on the national emblem of India and is taken from the Mundaka or the Mudaka Upanishad. So please, whenever next you see Satyameva Jayate, I think it should click that it's from the Mudaka Upanishad. Now finally, coming to the end of our ancient history session with the last Vedic literature as Vedangas. These are known as limbs of Vedas. There are 6 Vedangas: Shiksha, Kalpa, Vyakran, Nikruta, Chanda and Jyotish. So 6 Vedangas, and I think the best point here to remember would be that they are in fact limbs of Vedas. So I know things may be a little difficult to remember, but that's alright. I think with constant practice and work, you will be able to solve it, and you'll be able to remember these kind of difficult names easily. So yeah. So guys, with this we conclude the discussion on Ancient History 1. In Ancient History 2, we'll be going ahead with the Ancient History part where we discuss dynasties and religions. So hoping to see you soon.